What's up, everybody? First off, I just want to say I hope everybody is good. I mean, really good. Life is an amazing and beautiful thing, and all of us at times lose sight of that or get caught up in things that don't matter. And I know on this show, a lot of times we discuss things that can be weighty issues when carried too much or for too long, and thinking like that all the time can get heavy. Trust me, I know. So I just wanted to take a second to remind everyone the same way I have to remind myself to check yourself, keep things in the proper perspective, remind yourself what's important and what's not. And above all, have fun and enjoy it, whatever that means to you. It's just a ride, and we can change it any time we want. So with that said, this talk is in response to the 9/11 Remembrance/Justice Rising episode I released on September 11th. In that episode, I recall some of the events of that day and days surrounding it. I stated that 9/11 was a false flag attack and that it's been proven to be. I invited anyone who didn't know or believe that and who believes the official story to contact the show so we could discuss it. Well, someone did. Now, no matter how strongly I feel about something, I will wholeheartedly try and listen to a difference of belief or opinion. But belief and opinion are the key words here. Both of those words means there's an absence of proof. According to dictionary.com, the definition of belief is confidence in the truth or existence of something not immediately susceptible to rigorous proof. In other words, believing means putting confidence that something exists or is true because whatever it is not susceptible to rigorous proof, meaning you can't prove it, but you believe it. Once something is able to be proven, though, almost always scientifically, by the way, from that point on, it doesn't matter what your belief or opinion is. You can have them, but it doesn't change the fact of what has been proven to be. So as I touched on in the Remembrance episode, that is truly what sets 9/11 apart from practically all other false flag events. That it was on such a grand scale with so many eyewitnesses, so much video evidence, so many parts to the official story that could be investigated in hindsight. And the laws of physics and nature were contradicted by the official story and were observable for all to see. While other false flag events have been exposed and proven through release of official documents, memos, reports, confessions, whistleblowers, and scientific evidence, 9/11 and the anthrax attacks, which, by the way, started on September 18th, 2001, 1 week after September 11, and continued for several weeks. But because they were both so scientific in nature, and with the point we've come to with mankind's knowledge and technology, they've both been able to be tested and proven false through scientific scrutiny and common basic laws of physics, natural laws that none of us control or decide. They just are. 9/11 has been proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that the official story is not true, period, which I will explain how and why in just a moment when I respond to the email I got. But first, who the email came from is important also. So this email came from a person that I somewhat know, but I know them well enough where it counts, that I know this person questions everything and takes time to research and draw their own conclusions about things, especially big or deep things like 9/11. So it was eye-opening and motivating to me to realize someone like that, and I'm sure many others, still believe the official version. And I know for a fact through different acquaintances with school-age children that the official version is being taught by the letter to the next generations in public schools, aka indoctrination centers. So literally, if we don't stop it now, it will never be stopped. It will foment in this upcoming generation, a lot of which are adult already, and it will become a thing of the past and an artificial truth because so many will tend to believe it. See, history is always written by the winners. When two cultures or ideologies clash, the loser is obliterated and the winner writes the history book, books which glorify their own cause and disparage the conquered foe. As Napoleon once said, "What is history but a fable agreed upon?" It is so vital to understand because what 9/11 actually was the culmination of greed, power, control, dominance, unaccountability, insanity, and outright fucking evil. that had been meshed together and allowed to fester on themselves for hundreds and hundreds of years, culminating into the greatest show on earth. 9/11 was truly the launching pad for the New World Order. It started with telling us there was an evil boogeyman that could be anywhere at all times. Its name was terrorist, and it was faceless. So for our own safety, they permanently took away more rights, monitored everyone, militarized police, enacted a surveillance state, and pushed the Patriot Act through Congress. And to hear it in the words of the ACLU, quote, hastily passed 45 days after 9/11 in the name of national security, the Patriot Act was the first of many changes to surveillance laws that made it easier for the government to spy on ordinary Americans by expanding the authority to monitor phone and email communications, collect bank and credit reporting records, and track the activity of innocent Americans on the internet. While most Americans think it was created to catch terrorists, the Patriot Act actually turns regular citizens into suspects. End quote. If you follow the link in this episode's description, you can download an awesome, informative infograph the ACLU has created, pointing out in fine fashion the surveillance state that blossomed from 9/11. We all know it. War, between physical war and societal war, affects the entire planet in the grandest ways. Between killing and being killed, extorting, plundering, destruction, refugees, famine, disease, wasting of resources, and polluting the environment. And, of course, profit. War is the biggest producer of all of these. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist or an architect or engineer to investigate and realize the same people who start and instigate wars are the same people who profit off of them. So now I'll go into the email and respond to it. And what's very interesting about this email also is that I think a lot of people think this way, which is what makes it very interesting to me. I'll read it verbatim and pause throughout to respond. And so it starts out by saying, I saw some of your recent episodes about the 9/11 event. I used to think that it was a, quote, false flag attack, but now I do not see it as such. I see you ask for any input in your show. I think I would say this. And they numbered it. So number 1 says, we are not experts in those fields, nor do we have access to all of the data collected around the event. So we are left to analyze it from behind a screen. That is false. That is not true. Because we are not experts in those fields. No, me and this person and a lot of people are not experts in those fields. But there are literally thousands of experts in their fields, in all fields, in engineering, in physics, in science and research, in architects, engineers. All these people have done they are experts, and they have done everything with the evidence and tested it and proven it. And I'll get into that more. But then it says, nor do we have access to all the data collected around the event. That's not true. Well, that's partially true because we don't have access to all of it, but we have access to a lot of it. And a lot of it was actually can be investigated in hindsight, because these are things that were filmed, especially the second tower and building 7, not the first tower so much, but, actually the first 2, but they were all filmed a lot from different angles. They have all the blueprints and these buildings were recent. That's the thing that people have to understand too. These buildings weren't built, a long time ago. The Twin Towers were built in 1970, and they were up to all the codes. They were, obviously at that point making skyscrapers. And World Trade Center 7 was built in 1987. So these are not old buildings. And, there was no excuse for what happened. But about the access to the data, there's access of the buildings falling. There's access of what was in the dust. They found thermitic material, which is, I'm not going to get into the details of all this information, but I'll just point out the basic facts. And this stuff that they found in numerous samples of the dust samples from when the buildings collapsed, all this shit was pushed out. It's proven through analysis, and it's all this stuff has been. This isn't one person that tested something. This has been, tested throughout the scientific community. It's proven. They found thermitic material in this stuff. It was red chips that were unignited, and they thought it was paint at first, but they figured it out. That's what this is. This thing only comes from one place. It's a military grade incendiary. That's the only place it comes from. The fact that proven facts of after the buildings fell from the satellites, people can look everything that I'm saying up, everything from the satellites looking down on this, taking the temperature at ground zero where the buildings collapsed, literally thousands of degrees for weeks after these towers fell. And to add to both of those astounding things I just said, this was underground. So how can this is the science, and I won't go into past that, but those things can only happen, we know, through science, through certain things and certain materials that we have. Nothing retains that kind of heat. See, the thermitic is meant for that because it's meant to be used underwater and stuff like that. That's why they couldn't put this shit out with the water. And that's why it stayed thousands of degrees. This is factual shit. There's only one way these things can happen. So there's a lot of experts in the fields, and there's a lot of access to the data. So we're not left to analyze it behind a screen. We're left to see this maybe behind a screen, but we can see that it's proof. You can see these things happening. That's the point about 9/11 being such a big event. So many cameras, so many ways to investigate it in hindsight. Okay, number two, they say, even if we were experts, but not have access to all of that data and go to see the aftermath and analyze that, we would still be left with incomplete data and behind the screen investigation. Again, not true, because what they're saying is essentially what I just answered. Okay, but so they're saying even if we were experts, so there's the experts, but now have access to all the data, where they didn't have all the data, and go to see the aftermath and analyze that, we'd still be left with incomplete data. Well, by definition, you would be left with incomplete data, yes. And again, if you know what else happened with that, how they literally, the biggest crime scene ever in the history of the world, or at least for the U.S., I should say, take that back. But they literally, and again, this is documented, they literally got everything out of there as quick as they could, all the steel, everything. And there wasn't much, everything was pulverized, and there's only one way that can happen. Gravity doesn't just pulverize concrete. These are explosives, which is why when you're seeing it fall in all the video shots, you can see things going outward. And they don't just go outward a little bit. These are huge steel beams. These motherfuckers are like tons and tons. These motherfuckers can't literally fly out like a rocket missile. What's doing that? See, this isn't me sitting here saying this, and it's not provable. Anybody can look and see this shit. And I understand that at first people, you're like, okay, well this, well that, because it's so big, it's so overwhelming. There's so many implications. I get all that, but I will continue to go on and right now through this email and tell you why, even though this is a good thought process that a lot of people use, they're trying to be critical and they're trying to be, objective or whatever, but say, well, we don't know because we're not there. But that's why that's not true. And what that tells me, and no offense to this or anybody, but that tells me you haven't really looked recently. You haven't looked for a long time, and you haven't looked in the right places, because one of the things I've heard from this person actually and other people is that there's so many, conspiracy theories and you don't know what to believe. And that's true on a lot of things. That is true. But again, that's what sets 9/11 apart, because it's provable. It's not somebody saying this. It's not even like the Gulf of Tonkin, for example, and these are official or, government papers, and they're like, okay, that's government. But, it's like, okay, that's a piece of paper. No, these are things that you can actually see and verify. So anyway, number two is incorrect also. So number three, even if we were experts in the field and had firsthand access to all the data we wanted and went to analyze the aftermath of the collapsed buildings, it is too complex for one expert, so our conclusion will be limited. Yes, again, that is true in the statement, but it's false in the sense of 9/11 and what we're talking about. Because if that was the case, it would be too complex for one expert. So our conclusion would be limited, as they say. But that's the point. There is thousands and thousands of, these aren't somebody that wants attention. These are like all of them are architects, engineers, PhD, military people, like all these people, firemen, all these people that are recorded, hundreds and hundreds of people. Hundreds of people are documented through news reports. A lot of them, there's, if you look around YouTube, you'll find the footage of these people, like, a compilation or whatever. Again, this isn't me saying this. This is people on the day. There's no mistaking. This is not faked, and most people will remember a lot of these images anyway when they see them. Probably even certain people saying things. Oh, I remember that person, But these are hundreds of people saying there's explosions, there's secondary explosions. There's countless numbers of stories of the explosions and what it's done to people. But again, let's stay focused here and let's stay on the email. All right. So now, as you can see, 1, 2, and 3, they've basically been adding a little bit. Well, we're not experts or this. Okay. But even if we were experts in this, and that's good. Like, that's good because that's how you should think. You do it step by step. You ask the why and the how, you keep going, you go step by step, so if you can't answer that, okay, well, what about this? So their thought process is correct, but I'm just pointing out why applied in this situation when there is verifiable scientific evidence, why this thought process is the wrong one. And it basically doesn't work because it's the wrong thought process. The thought process when you have proof is to look at it. And thanks to these people for 19 years, these people who are experts, who did put everything on the line, there's been all kinds of retaliation. I mean, if you watch some of the 9/11 remembrance video conferences they had that I actually made the episode for the first time, you will see, but there's all the retaliation and stuff that's happened. So this stuff is real. It's just, again, it's not, where are you going to hear it from? Me? You're like, who's this asshole, or somebody else? You're like, they got a good show with a good video. I might want to believe them, Look, you can do this stuff for yourself. That's the point. You can, if you care. And I understand, like, a lot of people, there's so much, like, what do you do? But something like that's why this is so huge to me, because it's of what it means, what it has to tell people, and that it's provable. Okay. So number 4, here they culminated it all. Based on 1, 2, and 3, we are simply observers that know very little about the subject. So our best bet is to, quote, trust what we read/see. Well, again, as I pointed out, me and this person, a lot of the people, we're observers in that sense, yes, but we do know a lot on the subject, actually. So for me to, quote, trust what I read and see, I trust what I can trust, what I can basically prove. If I can't prove it, I can believe it, but I can't trust it, can I? I mean, because that's the whole point. You don't even know if it's true or exists or whatever. So you're believing or you're trusting in a belief or basically or a thought. So no, in this case, I trust what I can, or in any case, but especially this case, I trust what I can prove. They go on to say there are many doctors who are unable to judge complex scientific articles about medicine if it is not in their narrow field of research. So even they struggle. But again, these are experts in their field that did their part to put this all together. Imagine how good we are to, quote, do our own research when it comes to this subject. So again, we are limited observers that rely mostly on trusting this or that, since we can't really analyze what they present us. Well, again, what they present us, who's they? If you just go by what the mainstream media is talking about. And I think this person is not talking necessarily about them, but actually they go on and kind of do so. But yeah, we can't really analyze what they present us. Well, because you're saying you're trusting this or that, but no, because again, the facts are there. There's so many facts to the whole entire thing that there are facts and they're proven to be facts. The biggest, some of the most obvious that you can't argue with. There's a ton other, a lot of them, all over the place. There is conspiracy theories tied to this, like no planes. There's like, almost like flat earth. There's a big thing in the 9/11 truth movement where, it's like instead of flat earth, there's like no planes. There was no planes used at all. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about? You can see there's fucking planes. That's literally like saying the earth is flat. If you were 6, maybe, but you can see the shit. You can see it's curved. There's a bunch of ways you can tell. You put 2 motherfucking sticks in the ground, they're going to do different because of the curvature. Come on, man. So, all right. So you're saying that, but it's like just stupid no plane shit. Dude, you see what are you talking about? Now, whether they were drones or switched out or any of this shit, that's whatever. Cause that stuff you can't prove. You can put together the evidence and make an assumption. But again, a lot of this stuff is purposely to confuse people and throw them off and make people think that. So even if it started by a, secret agent, this no plane shit, and then it just takes off like a flat earth or something. But you just gotta see through that shit. Obviously there was fucking planes. What the fuck do you mean? So, you just gotta, that's where you gotta just use your head, but, the whole thing, you just use your head. If you got intelligence, but that's what surprises me about this, that people have just ruled it out. I think what it is, honestly, I think people got to a point, like they did so much, like this person. I know they did. They even say it, and I know I've talked to them, where they did so much research on it and then just basically came to like a conclusion up to that point and was like, yeah, because of all these reasons and they didn't see anything maybe up to that point that was conclusive, or that kind of stuff. All right. So anyway, and then they finish this paragraph says, sure, some things seem to make more sense than others for us, but let's be honest, we are not, quote, demolition experts or engineers and such. See, again, I understand what this person's saying. And I think a lot of people are thinking like this that never looked into it or looked up to a certain point, like I was just saying, but no, we're not engineers and such, but there's literally, you go on AE911truth.org and there's 3,500, I think, that's signed on, and they give statements and everything, like, and so, yeah, it's a big thing. And these are people with, whatever the word you want to use is, illustrious careers. These people study this shit. This isn't somebody, no offense to a McDonald's burger flipper, but this is somebody, these are people that studied, they put their careers, everything on the line. You know what I mean? I think that's the whole point. That doesn't even at least perk your interest. Shit, what? Wait a minute. There's over 3,500 architects and engineers who signed this thing saying, yes, this does not add up. We want, and there's firefighters for 9/11 Truth. This is the point. People are speaking out. You're just not hearing it because you're not listening. You're not focused. All this stuff. Like if you're thinking like this, I understand, but something of this magnitude that you can prove it. We're all sitting here talking about trying to change the world and do all this stuff. That's great, but you got to understand what you're working with. These people, the true elites of the world, and I don't even like using that word because to me that's exceptional, like in a good way. These are literally this fucking scum of the earth. Now, I'm very psychological, so I get it. Whether they started in that corruption, whether they formed in that, or they were corrupted and nurtured or whatever. The point is they are physically corrupted. They are the wrong ones of us. They need to be reprogrammed, reshaped, something. But we, because the majority of us are good-hearted, good-loving people, we want to believe. That's why you have so many religious people. Think about that. These people are believing in something that they literally cannot prove. There's no physical way in reality, obviously, they can prove it. Now, I don't want to get sidetracked here, but I would just want to clarify, I was making a point with that, which I think was a good point, actually. Spirituality, 1,000, 10,000%. I get, I'm with, I believe, I know is true. And that, to me, is what all religious people, the ones who really, believe it and feel it and all that, they are. But that's what they're feeling. They're feeling the same thing we're all feeling. That's what's crazy to me. Everybody just uses different words and they think they're different. See, they feel they're different. The crazy part is it's the exact same thing they're talking about. Whew, man, it's heavy, right? All right. So anyway, they go on next paragraph, which actually this is it. Oh no, I get that back. There's a couple, but if you can bear with me. So after all that, they say, so to me, it is a matter of trust. If I listen to those who say that it was a false flag, they will seem convincing. Parentheses, explaining how buildings collapse and why it likely to be a controlled demolition and such. But is that due to my own ignorance? There are experts arguing both sides of the matter. And then they proceed to give me two links, one to architects and engineers, and one to just September 11th attacks, both Wikipedia page. And it says, so it depends what we choose to trust. But see, again, everything that they're saying basically, and everything that really anybody argues or says like this pertaining to 9/11, you're wrong. I mean, you know, that's what I mean. Or however you want to say it, you're incorrect because you're not understanding that the evidence is actually already proven. You just haven't realized it because you haven't looked into it, or you haven't looked into it again for a while or something like that. So this is outdated. So it depends what we choose to trust. But in this case, again, that doesn't apply because choosing to trust something obviously insinuates there's a lack of evidence or knowledge, right? Because if you knew what the truth, you wouldn't choose to not trust the truth, would you? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So that's an absence of evidence, and there is evidence. So, and this is, now they go into why they don't think it was a false flag attack. It says, here's why I don't think it was a false flag. If it was, we would see many well-known journalistic organizations exposing it in great detail. ABC Four Corners from Australia does a fantastic job exposing corrupt governments from all around the world. Al Jazeera from Qatar does the same. PBS, especially Frontline, from US is another one that does a fantastic job. Couple it with ProPublica, VPRO from Netherlands, DW from Germany, BBC from UK, and so many other. Well, first off, the BBC from UK reported the collapse of World Trade Center 7, the Salomon Brothers building, over 20 minutes before it actually collapsed. So go figure that one. And see, for this person to even be aware of all those news outlets and supposedly investigative journalism, they look at everything and they try to put it all together. But the point that apparently they're missing with that is that almost all media everywhere is controlled by a handful of entities everywhere in the whole entire world. And they might be a little different. Like in the United States, for example, there's literally five companies that own all the media. I actually just released the episode a couple Sundays back, or last Sunday, whatever it was, about that. It's literally five companies that own all the U.S. media, and it explains which ones they are and, how it works and how they get around it and all that kind of stuff. But and it's no different any other place because, again, we understand the system. We understand the way money works, and money is power, money is control. So obviously the people with the most money are going, and of course, buying and owning and possessing. Yeah, it's the point. The bigger you get, the bigger you're going to get because it's like a vacuum. It's like you're just sucking everything up. So that's what happens. So that's why you have five companies in the U.S. that run all the media. And I'm sure, I don't know the numbers on the other countries, but obviously a handful, because this is how the entire world lives by the same obvious monetary, capitalist, profit-based, whatever, rig system, fiat currency system. So anyway, all these things they might, and they do go on to say, these ones have exposed so many corruption scandals, yet none of them seem to get to the other side of the 9/11 argument. Well, like I just was saying, because that's why they're controlled by a handful of people, and there's so much at stake. It's easy to say, well, they would expose it. This one would expose it. But there's so much at stake, and these people are all in bed together, and they are the elites. They are owning and controlling and running everything. Why do they want to wake people up? This is the whole point. This is the deep state. This is the true ruling class. These are the motherfuckers who there's literally hundreds throughout the entire world. That's it. These are the motherfuckers who meet in like Davos in Switzerland for these yearly things. I mean, they're doing it out in the open. They kind of almost have to, with now they can't go to Jekyll Island, like they did when they drew up the Federal Reserve Act at night and nobody know about it. And they go under aliases and fly in a private plane. I mean, yeah, you can do a lot of this shit now, but so they didn't, and obviously it's gotten to the point where they're just like, fuck it, I'm just going to do this out in the open. I mean, what do they hide it for? They have control of everything. So it's literally hundreds. That's it. That basically run everything in the entire world. That's insane to think about. But these people literally meet and talk, and this is what they do. And they draw up plans, and it just goes down the chain of command. This is how everything works in the world. Jobs are everything, and money is everything. They've built it up like that. So obviously, if they're in control of the jobs and the money, it's pretty easy to understand. So anyway, I just back up. It says these ones have exposed so many corruption scandals, yet none of them seem to get to the other side of the 9/11 argument. The Panama Papers, the NSA leak, and all kinds. Well, the NSA leak, by the way, see, that was the Intercept. That's Glenn Greenwald's thing, startup, whatever. And Edward Snowden did that. He was a whistleblower. So just to clear that up. But so it says the Panama Papers, the NSA leak, and all kinds of other such investigative journalism endeavors have done a fabulous job exposing the most powerful of the world. Yet again, I do not see that with 9/11. Well, as far as some, because again, of course there is individual, kind of like the Intercept and, others, but that truly, seemingly at least, do a very true independent, reporting and non-biased. And, of course, for the most part, we all have some biases, and yeah, they did the NSA leak. They did a lot of the stuff, in the Brazilian government. The government went after them with Glenn Greenwald with cyber crimes. Again, they just make this shit up. Try to say he was tapping their cell phone. I made a joke about it in one of the Truths News I made, where saying I was reporting on that because, it was a fake news program that told facts with jokes, basically, is what I was going for. But yeah, they went after him and, said he was trying to tap their phone or, tap phones and stuff like that, or, his contact or whatever, basically something like that. And I made a joke, like he's saying, the government released an official statement saying we are the only ones that can, hack cell phones, monitor and spy on people. How dare anyone do that to us? Because that's the craziness. See, they try to do it, but like, what are you talking about? You doing this shit. They're the ones doing it, and then even if that was the case, but again, it's just, to blackmail, silence, whatever. So they're saying they don't see that with 9/11, and like I said, some of those have done different things pertaining to it, but I can't answer that part. Sometimes it's just like with the whole entire 9/11 story. Yeah, there's certain things, of course, you can't answer, but it's like I say, just because, it's like when the first scientist or whatever started saying the earth was spinning, and, society back then was like, are you talking about, this heresy or whatever? And if we were spinning, how come shit isn't flying off? How come we don't get dizzy? How come all this shit? And because they couldn't answer it, they're like, well, see, you don't know what you're talking about. But just because you can't answer every single, that is not the point. I mean, if you can prove it other ways, which obviously it got to the point where it was proved other ways. So people's like, oh, okay, yeah, I see now the facts. See, it's the same with this, with 9/11. It's got to the point where if you look, it's been like this for a while. But I'm saying, if you look, you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. There ain't no motherfucking way these buildings fell from fires or for a plane. It's literally physically impossible. The laws of physics don't allow it. And it's not just, let me clear this up real quick too. It's not just video and watching video, and that's a big part of it. But they have done all kinds of, they had all the blueprints. The people who designed this shit was alive. You know what I mean? Like, all this evidence is still there. These aren't something like that happened out at sea and you're trying to come in and investigate that. You know, this is right there in the U.S. We have all the documents, the blueprints. We know what it was made with. We know all this shit. And the architects and engineers have done an amazing job for almost 19 years of researching and exposing this. And, you know, NIST puts out, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, you know, the government thing that took up the investigation, and they put out their final report, and the architects and engineers have shredded it. And there's stuff omitting that they know, for example, was in the building, like support things and all this. It's just like the whole thing is just fraud. See, and they've challenged it, and of course NIST is like, they just denied their there's a term for it. It's not challenge, and they just denied their thing. So now they're basically going to sue them in court because they have to answer this, because it's provable that what you're saying is not true. So to go on here with the email, it says more to that. It would be a fantastic opportunity for tribes like Russia or China to expose this, so that U.S. will get a punch in the face on this global "my dick is bigger" competition. I haven't seen that either. So that, again, is a logical and appropriate, I guess, way of thinking, or trying to analyze a situation that you feel like you don't have the evidence for, basically, like in this case. But again, what makes that, not what makes that untrue, but the reason that is to answer that, because one, well, I should probably say it's the other way around, but I saved number two for the more kind of dramatic. But one is, this is the whole point. They have shit on each other. This is how and why spying, and I mean, among other reasons, but the spying and espionage and all these things, and tapping of phones and email. This is why. Look what happens in the United States. They do it in our face. They can't do it to these. They can't say that to the public and say, look what we, you know, they do it a lot and try to act like it's an anonymous source or whatever, you know, or pin it on somebody, but they don't come out and say it because, you know, but they say it like in the countries. That's why they do what they do, like in political races, you know, and they'll be like, well, look, this bitch's emails and, you know, and all this, she's looking at dick pics at work and shit. You know what I mean? And you're like, damn, I thought I erased that shit. But the point is, they do this in our face because this is what they do. And again, knowing the world and the way it works and the way all throughout history, ruling people, you know, when they were against each other, they did it to defeat them. Now they do it to control them. And so they have stuff on them too, major stuff. But number two, also to that, to why it would be a fantastic opportunity for places like Russia and China, because they are, you know, very big rivals, probably the biggest rivals of U.S. and those things. Of course, they partner in a lot of ways, but, you know, I'm just saying in general to the overall global dominance. But again, keep in mind, some of the owners of everything, and they're in these countries too. So again, obviously this is how it works. Like I said, they meet or they decide and they just pass it down. And the ones that they can't directly control, they control through influence and prices and tax, you know, whatever, all these different ways, and media, you know, I mean, there's a ton of ways when you control everything, and pick your poison, how you want to poison somebody. So, but anyway, number two to this of why these major countries, won't do that is because the ruling class is the ruling class. Think about that. We are literally saying it out loud every time we say it. Ruling. They are ruling thing. They are ruling the planet. They are ruling us. That's why you call them the ruling class. If you were ruling Would you give that up? I highly, highly fucking doubt it. In fact, I know you wouldn't give it up. Nobody would give it up. And you want to know something? Even if hypothetically you wanted to, you know what would happen to you? You'd be a Kennedy getting your fucking head blown off. Or you'd be, I forget the names, but any of these leaders or people who have been killed in plane crashes and assassinated and all this shit. That's the point. And these things happen all the time, of course. And, you never hear about it. If you do, it's always this or that, or they control the media. I mean, this is the point. You got to understand the reality of the world. There's literally people living different lives. And I mean, we know that just from, working class or common folk type people. People live different ways and stuff like that. But that's something else. See, we all live within, for example, 10 different elements, 20 different elements, right? So we're all kind of the same like that. But these people are in a whole different element class. The true richest of the world and the ruling class. Because all these people are born into this shit for hundreds of years. Again, this isn't me saying this. This is, look at it. All the big major ruling families, especially, or at least I should say, since cultures started getting settled and, established and shit like that. Maybe not so much before all this stuff, but that's just what it is. That's how the world has been. And we have to understand this now. And through the internet, we can share this and people can do their own research. That's the thing. That's why they are censoring the internet now. And they're using COVID as the big part of it. Because if you haven't noticed before, you might put shit up, but almost everything got through on YouTube and Faceplant and all these, major social whatever fucking platform. Now put anything up that falls into certain things, especially with the COVID, but that's how they're kind of using it to desensitize, but still, who's to say, a lot of this stuff. So, yeah. So anyway, to go on with this email, in conclusion, from my perspective, we are simple observers of how the world works, and we have to trust that the ones analyzing the world tell us the truth. It is a quest of who to trust rather than what to trust, since we are unable to do our own investigations. But see, I have to stop there because everything they just said again is incorrect. So it says in conclusion, from their perspective, we're simple observers of how the world works. Again, in a general sense, yes. Talking about 9/11, yes, to the extent that we're not there looking under the microscope at these things or, analyzing all these things. Yes, in that sense, we're observers of how this is working. And it says we have to trust the ones analyzing the world to tell us the truth. Well, see, again, I know what they mean and it's right on certain levels. But in this case, okay, so you have to trust the ones analyzing the world to tell us the truth. And by world, in this case, we're going to say 9/11. Well, okay, well, obviously you can pick anybody to trust. You could pick me. You could pick the person who made the email, or you could pick a group, organization, right? Or you could trust nobody. So, okay, if we're picking somebody to trust, from everything I know of all false flags, from all ruling classes, from all history, from all these things, including recent 100 years United States history. And then you look at all these people again, thousands of literally almost 4,000 or 3,500 architects and engineers who have signed on in saying, we don't believe this because it doesn't matter. So you take the context off of it, you take the 9/11 off of it or any of that. If it just happened any other time, you can say there's no way that can happen. So then you just put 9/11 and the implications with, and that's where people's like, well, there's no way. I mean, it's the official story. Well, okay, but pretend this happened just a regular day. 2 planes flew into 2 different, they hit at the top. These buildings fall in on their own footprint at free fall speed, meaning no entire resistance on the entire way down. Come on, people. Let's go back to 2nd grade. So there's only one way that can happen. And then you have Building 7, which was a 47-story tall steel frame, concrete, fire reinforced, fire code. Nothing in the building almost everything in the building has to, by code, be fire retardant and all this stuff. 47 stories, built in 1987. All you had was literally some office fires. It's filmed, it's documented. This isn't me saying it or some architect and engineer who created a film. This is documented on day of, all news reports, all things. These are just a couple fires on floors. And you can see it, and they analyzed it and everything because of the footage. You can see the fire. It's going from different places. It's burning out. It's not that big. And this 47-story steel frame and concrete high-rise structure with fire retardant and all this stuff, built in 1987. I know I said that, but that's important. 5 hours, and to be precise, I think around 20 minutes later, after the planes hit, this building just suddenly and abruptly falls in on its own footprint, straight down with no resistance on the way down. There was only, I don't care what building it was, I don't care what time it was, anything. There is only one way by the laws of physics that can happen. And all the columns have to be essentially removed at the same time, or at least in succession, to make it, there's no resistance on the way down. Now, again, like this person would say, and like a lot of people would say right now, yeah, but that's okay, maybe, but that's you looking at the thing and you're clocking it. And yeah, that's weird, but you can't actually prove. I mean, yeah, it fell at free fall speed. No, it wasn't touched by anything, no plane or anything. Well, they supposedly a little debris hit it or some bullshit. But anyway, so yeah, you can analyze, and yeah, it fell at free fall, and that's kind of strange. It's hard to explain, but you can't really prove it. But see, that's not true. It is proven. It's actually proven through numerous ways and analyzations and computer models and whatnot. Prior to that, the NIST explanation from the official story, their final thing, again, this is out there. This is everything I've said. Everything I've said today is on here is total public knowledge, public record. I mean, it can be public knowledge if you want it to be. It's out there. And this little cute computer thing was fabricated from the start, and they prove it because, they have to release like the parameters they use, everything, the whole thing. And that's what's been analyzed by people who do know, experts who are speaking out, now as we speak about what I'm saying. And they're putting their lives on the line, careers on the line and everything. And they're trying to tell people this isn't, why would I mean, look, I'm just telling you, look at this shit. If you want to sit there and say, no, it's not true. No, we got to believe. Well, okay. But look, it's right here. This isn't some video that's doctored. This is provable shit, and it's proven. So yes, Building 7 fell 5 hours and 20 minutes later at free fall speed in its own footprint. There's only one way that can happen. And it is a documentary that's literally coming out. I forget, it's very soon. I mean, they've already, or actually they're going to wait till after the election bullshit, which is probably a good idea. They don't want it to get drowned out or, that's a good idea. It's going to come out right after the election, I believe, in the U.S. But it's a documentary made by Dylan Avery, who was the creator of Loose Change, which everybody knows about. Everybody. I mean, if you haven't, you've at least heard of it. Was one of the probably the biggest balls that got the 9/11 shit going. Because there's been some things redacted and all that. It's another thing people have to understand. When going through this, there is going to be, as David Chandler just put out, he's a big one in the 9/11 truth movement. He recently, on his YouTube channel, it's David Chandler. You could find it if you just search that, but I think it's 9/11 or something after, or truth or something like that. But as he says in one of his most recent videos, it's a great little video, 10, 20 minutes, whatever it was. He's, at one point in the video is saying what I'm trying to say now, that, there's been a lot of things throughout. He's actually breaking down the Pentagon attack is what it was. But where people didn't think things or they didn't know. So it's kind of like I was saying about the no plane bullshit. That's just, ignorant. That's like, flat earth shit. Doesn't make any sense. But some of this other shit like the Pentagon, because out of all the hundreds of cameras that are posted up around the Pentagon, including that day and all the other buildings and gas stations around there, the FBI literally went around and confiscated all the video like immediately after it happened. And that's one thing. Again, even if you want to say, well, this or that would, they wanted evidence, but then so why to this day is there 2 frames, literally 2 frames from the Pentagon or one of the Pentagon's like drive thing, like people drive in, they stop at a little checkpoint shit or whatever. It's from there and it's literally 2 frames. It shows nothing at first. And then it's like a big blurry image of something, looks like a fucking plane. And then there's a big explosion. So it's literally just the plane and the explosion, but you can't really see the thing clearly. Granted, this was years, 20 years, the camera wasn't that good, but I would think it was better than what it was. But anyway, and oddly, very oddly, the date is wrong in the bottom left corner of that video, by the way. It says September 12th. So now that one's left up to the conspiracy theorists. See, that's hypothetical. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's an explanation. Can we prove it? No. That doesn't mean the shit isn't doctored or whatever. So, but as David Chandler points out, things like this, especially this magnitude and all the evidence and whatnot, it's going to take twists and turns. So yeah, a lot of the things, he actually does mention the no planers thing too, about how that's ignorant, but, I don't think he uses words that eloquent, as ignorant, but so anyway, but yeah, the point is, so yeah, some of this stuff people didn't know, or they might've said, oh, there's a missile that, hit the Pentagon because, you didn't know. And, there's a lot of different things that's led up to, different things, but that video that I was talking about, actually, if you want to check it out, that's him breaking down again through all the evidence up to this point that pretty much beyond a shadow of a doubt, it was the plane that they said hit. Now, for any people with 9/11 Truth is listening right now, that's like, oh, he just lost me right there. Look, I'm with you because even watching it, see, this is where I try to be. I'm like, okay, let me hear what you're saying, but I've seen the pictures, they don't line up because even the first couple of pictures, it shows all the damage. And, there's like charred on the side, yes, from the explosion, but the building itself is fully intact. So it didn't seem like, how could that shit have hit? I used to question actually if it turned perhaps at the last minute to where the wings were up and down, north and south, because all the 3D things I've seen when they're trying to show there's no way this plane hit here in the Pentagon. Like I said, no, it doesn't line up because where do those huge ass engines would have slammed into that fucking building? And yeah, they might have exploded, but they would have done physical damage to the structure. You could have seen that. I mean, and you didn't. It was just like charred. And again, everything I'm saying, look up the pictures, people. You can see what I'm saying. But he actually went through all the evidence and shit, I had to watch it again. You know what I mean? It's one of them because I'm like, nah, man, it wasn't that plane. But I don't know. Like I said, they lay it out. And if it's the facts, that's what you got to go with. All right, look, I didn't think it was either a plane. If it was a smaller one or, something like that, or it was a missile or something, and especially that big hole, of course, that one picture where this is like several walls in of the Pentagon. And then for anybody who doesn't know, the Pentagon is literally one of the most fortified structures on Earth. It's like, ridiculous, depth of, concrete and like, yeah, it's like a little fortress. So to see that it's like an exit hole and it's several rings into the Pentagon. So it almost seemed like a bunker buster missile, as they call it, or something that will penetrate walls and then explode, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, and that's the point. You didn't know, but through all the evidence that's been out there and that's been acquired over the years and stuff, they've been able to analyze, and they're saying or he's saying at least, David Chandler, that he thinks, it was a plane, or it can kind of basically prove it. That same plane that, they said, or at least the same model plane, whatever, that they said, was hijacked and hit it. I actually just heard this recently. Like I said, the video just came out. So I'm going to listen to or watch it again, listen to it, and then go back and look again myself, because I always question that myself. Like, okay, what if it did go like north and south wings kind of thing? Wouldn't it be a smaller area? It does seem like it would kind of flip. You know what I mean? To where tails or engines or something would have like flown into the rings or type of thing. But this is what I'm saying. It's all new, but you got to go where the evidence leads you. So anyway, to finish with this email, after saying, in conclusion, from their perspective, we're observers, how the world works. We have to trust the ones analyzing the world tell us the truth. It's a quest of who to trust rather than what to trust, since we're unable to do our own investigations. Like I said, corrected all that. I choose to trust. See, again, you choose. If you know something is factual, obviously you can't choose to trust it or choose not to trust it. You can choose to listen to it or, whatever, go with it. But if you know something's factual, like if you know fire's hot, you put your hand on fucking fire, it's hot. You can choose not to believe it, but put your hand on the fire, you're still going to get burnt. So again, to say, I choose to trust that if 9/11 would have been a false flag attack, it would have been exposed in great detail by now by any of the big journalistic groups from around the world. But again, I understand that way of thinking, but the reality is, and this person should know, but still, that everything is controlled by a handful of people everywhere in the world, basically. Even resources that are sparse are controlled by somebody. And then when people are compiled together, all the businesses and jobs and money and all that is controlled by the same people who own the sparse resources. See what I mean? So, but no, because all the main things, yes, they expose some things, but that's another trick. That is honestly another trick of, propaganda, but disinformation and controlling the media. Yeah, it's a simple mind trick. It's a simple psychology thing, and you can do it with people. I used to do it with people when I was younger, because when I was younger, I used to use my talents and my abilities and things of my understanding nature to use it, for selfish reasons and stuff like that. So I took advantage of people, I didn't think anything too major, but I took advantage of people and stuff like that because I could. And that's what I did. But it's a simple psychology when you either give partial truths or certain full truths, because then that makes you seem believable. But yeah, it's simple psychology. You tell some truths or full truths, either or, and you mix them up, of course. So then it seems like you're trying. Well, they're trying because they told the full truth about this and they were just wrong about that because they didn't know all the facts at the time. And of course, some of this can be true, but not with mainstream media sources, because these are owned, controlled, run, and regulated by the owners, the ruling class, the truly fucking owners, elites of everything. So no, just because they expose some and you think, well, one of them would. No, because they're all the same, essentially the same. Ruling class wants to stay that way. So no, they're not going to expose something that, what the ruling class understands is that they are only there because the people allow it. Obviously, think about it. If truly enough people, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, rose up against this, you can't stop it, because group mentality and all that kind of stuff, of course, people's, now, see, this is the point. Take 9/11, for example. You have thousands of architects and engineers. You have all these people. See, but it's still not put out there. But imagine if mainstream media and everybody started talking about it. It would be like a wave of truly, like, holy shit, like an awakening, what? Wait a minute. And the trust would be gone. That's what they hold on to. That's what they know is keeping the whole game together, is the belief. So to sum this up, and I appreciate if you put up with me this long, but it's just such a big deal. It's so provable and proven. And this is what people really need to understand. So if you're one of those that is, whatever, fearful, or you turn away, or but you don't want to, this is like I try to explain. I explain us like a hand. Yes, we all are from the same hand, so to speak, the same organism, but we're essentially on different fingers. So we're at different lengths and levels of different things, of skills, knowledge, understanding, strength, height, literally everything. And that's just how I see it. So unfortunately, but sincerely believe that the pinky, the smallest amount of us, are the ones that are truly as awake and conscious as you can be, basically. Because in order to be that, you have to be two things. Absolutely, positively. You have to be two things. You have to be open-minded, and you have to be a critical thinker. If you're missing one, it won't work. The same way to have any constructive conversation, truly progressing, learning, building, growing, whatever conversation, you have to be open-minded and a critical thinker. You absolutely have to be, or it just doesn't work. You're essentially just pushing an agenda or a point of view or, whatever. And you have to be able to admit you were wrong. It's crazy because society is backwards in so many ways. I've said for a long time. I think, Earth, there's other Earths, so to speak, planets with things. And it's just like almost like different programs on a computer. And we're on this level type of thing. We're on the primitive ignorance, haven't tapped into our understanding and consciousness and stuff like that. I mean, we have in certain ways, and people have been trying to tell us this forever. We just haven't listened to them. Usually we kill the good guys. The ones that try to tell us it's all right. The point with 9/11, as this person tried to point out, is everything they said is, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a belief and or an opinion. And they even stated that a few times throughout the email. They choose to believe, or they choose to trust this, or, in their opinion. And that's the point. If we were just talking beliefs and opinions, we could go back and forth. It's like, religion or politics or whatever. It can go on forever because it's just opinions, basically. But when something is factual, when something is proven, and like I said at the beginning also, almost always scientifically, that's how you prove it. Because we know laws of physics and we know mathematics and things like that are throughout the universe, and they apply everywhere around us. And again, we're not separate. So we know these things are true. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you believe in or what you choose to believe. You can choose to believe, force travels this way and matter does this. But what we know up to this point is what we know. This is, how do you think they do CSI and all this shit? They go hindsight. That's what it is. They go hindsight to the thing. And that's literally all they did with 9/11. That's the point. They just had to gather evidence. It's the exact same thing. It's just like CSI. And they went and put it all together and analyzed it. And because we know it's not just watching some video and saying, okay, that building fell at free fall. There's no way. Guilty. Inside job. No. We're just talking about the buildings mainly because that's the most provable. It's already proven, but it's the most provable too, because of all the information and evidence is what I'm trying to say that's been recovered. So, but there's so many things to the other parts of the story that are proven false too. See, that's the thing, just to end with this, that I tried to make at the beginning and in the 9/11 Remembrance episode, that because it was on such a grand scale with so many ways to go back in hindsight and investigate it and prove things. Now, there's a lot of good documentaries and, things documenting 9/11 on YouTube in different places. I'll just name a couple and I'll put a couple links to them in the description that, I know are solid and, very telling and exposing. And, so one is September 11th, the new Pearl Harbor. I will link to the full version of that because there's different, parts or whatever, but this is the full version. It's almost 5 hours, but, I promise you it's very informative and telling and exposing. Of course you can watch it in parts or whatever, that's what most people do. That's what I did, but it really lays it all out, and asks the questions that most people ask and shows the people who are disputing it and compares the evidence to what they're saying, basically. So I encourage that one, but I'll link to that. I'll link to 9/11 explosive evidence, experts speak out. That was basically put together with AE 9/11 truth, but it's just what it sounds like. It talks to a bunch of experts, demolition and otherwise, in their field, and it does what it says. Experts speak out and they expose the truth. And again, very informative, very telling. I'll link to that. And because David Chandler is a physics professor who is one of the pioneers of the 9/11 truth movement, him and several others, but I will link a video for one of his videos too. It's a 5-10 minute video talking about the destruction of the towers, and it's showing it over and over so you can clearly see what he's saying. But I'll link those three in the description. I mean, they're just starting points or whatever. Do your own research. I might be crazy in a lot of ways and stuff like that, but I'm not a kook by any stretch of the imagination. I don't just believe shit or want to believe something. So I say, lean that way. I'm a very factual person. And the facts are out there and the truth has been exposed. And it's just a matter of people to wake up, find out, learn, understand, and realize it was a false flag attack and it was an inside job, obviously. And what that means, it's in our face. So what are we going to do with it? But I do appreciate everyone listening. I hope you got something out of it. Again, if you have questions, comments, whatever, you're more than welcome to contact the show. However you get this audio, there's links, my email, allrealshow@yahoo.com. You can, message the show directly. I'm, on Twitter, All Real Show, Facebook, All Real Show, you can find the show, and I encourage that's what this is all about for me. I want the truth in everything, and the differences of opinion are welcome. But when there's facts supporting a conclusion, we're not going to go far with the opinions. But as this person did, I want to thank them. If they hear this and want to come on the show and, talk about it or whatever the case, you'll get that episode too. I'll be more than welcome to. Absolutely. I really am looking forward to all those 9/11 discussions because, again, for anyone, period, but anyone who's trying to change the world as we are and the things that we're trying to do, create a whole new economic system. And you have to understand the reality of the world. It's ugly in a lot of ways, but you have to understand why it's ugly. It's ugly because a handful of ugly people inside with no empathy, no emotion, and just totally consumed by selfishness, greed, corruption, all that. And these people literally don't think like us. You see on the news or whatever where somebody, killed all these people and ate them or, did some crazy stuff or whatever. And people's reaction's always the same. How could they do that? How could somebody do something like that? They do something like that because they don't think like me and you. That's why we can't really comprehend that, because our minds don't work that way. So it is hard to understand, one thing to snap and kill somebody type of thing, but just to could do like crazy off the wall killing shit or whatever, it's hard to understand because most people don't think that way. And that's the same with the truly rulers and owners and controllers, the deep state or whatever you want to call it type people of the world. They literally don't think like us. They live in a whole different world to them. But it's time to stop turning a blind eye to the shit that's going on around us. You got to understand why and how everything is happening that's happening, and the reason it's been happening for hundreds and even thousands of years. It's because of the ruling class and elitism and these things. And that's the only way things are going to change. We have to end that. We have to end the hierarchical structure. We have to end an economy that perpetuates and rewards this shit, because these people who are controlling it don't give a shit. They're happy the way things are. They will literally run themselves and the earth into the ground, so to speak. And so you have to understand the way things are and the way these people are and the way they think. And exposing 9/11 to me does that, because it just puts in your face. Once you understand that, okay, what I'm saying, what everybody's trying to say, it's inside high ranking, high people. It's just screaming for revolution, retribution, and a absolute fundamental system change. The whole entire thing. Anyway, thank you all for listening. I'll catch y'all on another episode of the All Real Show. We are one.